Awesome. Perfect. Great. Spotlight. Wonderful. You're on the rock. Can I invite you to the other side?
I'm invited.
Only because I'm weird and persnickety. Also, I'm wearing a microphone.
Some of my
So I gave
friends
you
are
one.
persnickety.
Yeah. Well, Rabbi Fred started us with a nigun as the first. Do you want to lead us for our opening song in the nigun that was the first of the two Name That Tune melodies? Is it? No, I'm wearing one. Is it not going through?
Not very live.
It is. It is there. Mm-hmm. Check. Check one. Check. Check. Should be work. Well.
Working-ish.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. I can hear you.
Okay. Online they can hear me just fine. All right. I will try to speak very clearly into the microphone. Hello? Okay. Steve Lieberstein, we can add this to the list of sound technical pieces to work out. So let us begin with a wordless melody to kick us off into the key of Shabbat. Rabbi Fred, will you lead us in a little bit of a nigun? Oh, it's that one. I was in the other one. The one that you started off with, the first of the two. There you
One more time.
We lit the Shabbat candles a little while ago, and as someone who lives in a house with a cat with a tail, I have learned the art of lit candle carrying, because often it is not from the back of the room to a front of a room, but rather from the dining room to the inside of the metal kitchen sink. But so, our candles are lit. We bring in Shabbat with song, with community. We turn together to page 7 as we begin our service tonight with words of Psalms, our Kabbalat Shabbat, our warm-up on this beginning of our Scholar in Residence weekend. So page 7. Yedid nefesh
Rachaman Meshochavtecha Nel Retzonecha Yarutz Avdecha Kemo משתחווה אל מול הדרכה, תרב לו ידידותך, מנוחת צוף וכל טעם.
Last stanza. Alanna,
Pros kavivi alai, et sukat shalom echa, ta'ir eretz mikvodecha, nagila v'nismecha bach, maherahu kiva moed v'chonenu ki me'olam. Second day of the week that was. Can you actually, without pulling out your electronic calendar, remember Sunday night and Monday as opposed to the rest of the week? It depends on what happened, but somehow a beautiful exercise to take those big letters, like on page 24, bet, with a little number 2 in there in case you missed it, right? And say, oh, second day of the week, okay. Right? This is a little bit of a revisiting. We let the week settle. So we think back to where we were 5 days ago, and hopefully we have grown. We have evolved since then. And hopefully this weekend will be some additional evolution and growth and reflection. Probably not a whole lot that's going to be radically new for a thoughtful, pluralistic, progressive, well-educated community, but hopefully some new insight along the way. And the first insight that I want to share is inspired by the end of this psalm for the second day of Kabbalat Shabbat. And we're on page 27. And these words are probably familiar. It's one of those catchy sing-alongs that a lot of us know, even if we're not super into Hebrew text. But we're going to stop before we sing it, and we'll have fun singing it when we get there. But we're going to stop and just look for a minute at the words, the top 2 lines on page 27. Yismechu hashamayim. The shamayim, again, the skies or heavens, yismechu. They should be happy. The exact same kind of happiness that is human happiness. What's the most famous yismechu out there? Yismechu,
B'malachutecha.
Yismechu, b'malachutecha, ba-dum-bum-bum.
What tune do you
Right.
use?
That one.
Oh,
No, you?
that's a
Okay,
fun
all
one.
right. Oh, yeah, it is. Shomrei,
Yismechu v'malachutecha.
that one too. Shomrei, 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 Shabbat Bekoreh.
We should have like a melody swap. Ooh, this is fun.
I think
Yeah.
we're doing it now.
Right
Yes.
now.
So Shomrei Shabbat, look at us. We're a bunch of Shomer Shabbos Jews, right? So, right. But it's humans.
Hi, Zoom
Yismechu.
people.
Right. Yismechu is what we do. And here, the heavens are Yismechuing. The heavens are animate. Yismechu hashamayim, let the heavens rejoice. V'tagel haaretz. Tagel, from like Gila, the name, right? Which is kind of a musical sing out in joy. Haaretz, let the land sing out in joy. Hopefully we sing out in joy. I don't know the last time that you did. I hope it was recently. If not, give yourself permission, right? It's pretty awesome. But the land, the earth, Yiram hayam umlo'o. Ra'am, to kind of like lift up and be loud. The yam, the sea. Umalo'o, and what it contains, the teeming life of the sea, let it resound. Ya'aloz Sadai, this is another name, Aliza, right, which became Alice, is from, right, Aliz is like supernal, right? It's in that family of words for joy and beauty, but it's like a very special level of it. Sadai, from Sadeh, the field. Let the fields be Aliza. Let the fields be in that kind of supernal way. V'chol asher bo, and everything that's in the fields. All the microorganisms, all the birds that pass through. Let it be Aliz. Az yiranenu, and then Ronen will be another kind of singing out joy, kol atzei ya'ar, all of the trees of the forest. So words that we probably knew, we're hearing them, stopping to really think, what catches us maybe a little bit new or fresh? What's going on here for the psalmist? In your own words. My fields. Very nice. So there is a relationship here, and that could be an ownership claim, but it also could be a connection claim, right? Nice. Yeah.
Everything's interrelated.
Wait, Barry, say that with your unmute button.
Say that.
Yes. Yes, you are now.
So everything is interrelated, interconnected, and kind of commingling.
Nice. And interestingly, we started with Shemayim, and then we get to Yam, right? And somewhere in there we have the Ya'ar. So the heavens and the earth and the forests, just think carbon sinks. If you know the carbon cycle, and if you read the alarming news story this week about deep ocean benthic temperatures having risen a whopping 0.04 degrees Celsius, right? Which doesn't sound like much, but when you think how many cubic kilometers, how many literally gigatons and beyond, right? It's the amount of energy that the deep ocean has absorbed in just the last cycle is measured in like millions of Hiroshima atomic bombs. And that's us, right? So the forest, the sea, the heavens, the sky, definitely interrelated.
Let's go to Eileen first.
The other part that calls to me in this is that the fields and the trees speak to us.
The fields and the trees speak to us. So first, they speak. Wow, right? So this could just be anthropomorphic metaphors, right? This could be like any cute fairy tale with talking animals and, right, talking donkeys. What kind of religious tradition would have stories like that?
I mean, that's
right?
not for like, that's not for a few more months, I think.
Right. We're getting there, right? So they're talking, and they're talking to us.
Yeah.
Who else are they talking to or about? So
piggybacking on that, if you remember Rachel Carson in Silent Spring, that, when the fields were no longer talking, there was a question as to what was happening to nature. So that's what resonated off of that.
I also want to note that Sharon Starr wrote online that to her it sounds like spring emerging. Yiram Hayam Umalo, and that all of the Atse Ya'ar are singing and dancing and rejoicing. Sounds like springing.
Right. And at some level, it's very easy for us to relate to the forests dancing when it's spring. What about the forests dancing when it's fall? What about the forests dancing in winter? Tomorrow morning, if you come on the Not Nature Walk, we're going to look at Psalm 148, which has a reference to Eitz Pri, the fruit tree, V'chol Arazim, and all of the pine trees, often translated as barren trees. Ilan Srak is the Hebrew category, right? Because we can't eat their fruit. But how productive are the pine trees for the ecosystem and for our lives, whether or not we can eat a pine cone? So ours is this tradition that gets that the obviously useful and the less obviously useful are both part of the story. And they all count. So in Genesis 1, we usually think that God is the producer, and obviously behind it is kind of a divine creative energy, but twice it says, let the sea bring forth the fish. Let the land produce the creepy crawlies. Right? And it's almost like the cycles of nature are the representation of the divine energy at a level that we can comprehend. The idea that there's a stable orbit of a big ball of rock with just a little bit of hydrogen and oxygen in the right conditions that was able to bring forth the creepy crawlies. Please raise your hand if you are a creepy crawly. Right. Right. We need to celebrate those miracles.
Yes.
We need to think a little more like the psalmist. Yiram hayam umlo'o. Let the sea rejoice. Feel the rejoicing. Be part of the rejoicing. And then remember the news story this week and say, now what do I need to do differently or more of so that the sea can keep rejoicing? And so that my great-grandchildren someday can say, let the sea rejoice. This is our work. This is our opportunity. Be the psalmist. Tune in to some of the amazing riches of a tradition that help bring us back to a pre-industrial way of thinking. We drop the blinders of modernity and we get back in touch with something elemental and sacred. So more on all this later, including, Bert, I promise, next round. Okay.
Well, it makes me think.
Continuing in this, you are as promised, page 27.
Page 27.
Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz.
ישמחו השמיים, השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, ותגל הארץ. יירם הים, יירם הים, יירם הים ומלואו, יירם הים, יירם הים, יירם הים ומלואו, יירם הים, יירם הים, יירם הים ומלואו, יירם הים, יירם הים, יירם הים ומלואו. We rise in spirit or in body on page 37 for Psalm 29. Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod v'hozai, v'l'Adonai kavod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai b'adrat kodesh, kol Adonai ha'amayim el hakavod yirim, Adonai ha'amayim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach, kol Adonai hadar, kol Adonai shover arazim, vayishaber Adonai et arzei halevanon, vayarkidem kemo hegel Lebanon, Vesirion, kemo ben re'emim, kol Adonai chotzev lahavotesh, kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, kol Adonai cholel hayavot, vayachasof ye'arot, ubehechalo kulo omer kavod, Adonai lama bu yeshav, yeshev Adonai melech le'olam, Adonai yoaz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo. Hey, ay, nay, nay, ay, nay, nay. Yay, yay, nay, yay. Yay, 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 nay, nay. Yay, nay, yay, nay. Rabbi Fred, as we were going through the psalm, the word Sadai stuck out to me. My fields, right? God's fields, because it made me think about Lecha Dodi and the idea, the sort of the image of the medieval Kabbalistic masters in Sfat, like dressed all in white, going out into the fields to greet Shabbat, right? Lecha Dodi likrat kala, right? Greeting Shabbat like a Dodi, like a beloved. But there's something about the flip in the psalm that we talked through, where it's not the human beings rejoicing, right? I think about when I hear like let the seas rejoice, right? I think about myself rejoicing at the seaside. I think about myself rejoicing and hanging out in the fields, being Aliza in the fields, right? I think about myself frolicking in the woods when it's not raining hard, right? But there's a really intense flip that happens when we enter that psalmist's mind. And I wonder if we can use that kavanah, that flip, as a kavanah, as an intention as we move into Lecha Dodi and put ourselves in that place of being dressed all in white, greeting Shabbat. Joe, you didn't even know that you were wearing exactly the right outfit for tonight. Right, going out into those fields to greet Shabbat. It's not that the fields are there for us to be able to run through in order to greet Shabbat. It's that in greeting Shabbat, greeting this day of rest as we would a beloved, we are going back into that place where we're reconnecting with the fields, that we're able to sync up with their rejoicing. And that's maybe how we can get into Shabbat. So page 41. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmianu el hameyuchad Adonai echad U'shemo echad L'shemu tiferet v'litzchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabla. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'neelcha ki bekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Top of page 45. Hitoreri ki ba'orech kumi. Ay 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 uri uri shir daberi kevod Adonai layich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabel. Top of page 47. Yamin u'smol tifrotzi v'et Adonai ta'aritzi ay 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 al yadish ben parti ben nismecha ben nagila. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai b'nei Shabbat nekabela. And we rise in spirit or in body as we face the entrances to our sanctuary, our homes, our dens, our living rooms, our dining rooms, our bedrooms, whatever sacred space it is that we are here in for this Shabbat as we greet the Sabbath as a beloved. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvetzocho ay 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 toch emunei am segula. Boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yananai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. So we turn together to page 57 for Baruch Hu. Note that interconnectedness between human beings, nature, our celebration, and the source of life through which all blessing flows. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. And the blessing gives us strength and makes our vision clear. And the blessing gives us peace and the courage to dare as we bless the source of life. So we are blessed. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. We can be seated. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bidvaro Mariv Aravim B'chokhmah Poteach Sharim Uvidvuna Mishaneh Etim Malif Et Hazmanim Usader Et HaKochavim Rishotem Rak Yaker Tzon Umavir Yom, Umevi Laila, Umavdil Ben Yom, Uven Laila, Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Elachai V'Kayam, Tamidim Lo Chaleinu Leolam Vaed, Baruch Ata Adonai, Amariv Aravim.
Before we continue in the Siddur, just a quick reflection on cycles. Bicycles, recycles, right? So many wonderful things about cycles. To state the obvious, our ancestors in that pre-industrial zone, night was a time of danger. You had to go out to use the bathroom and you didn't know what was lurking. You also were acutely aware of the cycles of the moon, because how many lumens are available in the backyard at 3 a.m. when you gotta go, right? Entirely depends on where we are in the phase, as well as the weather. This awareness of our place in all of those cycles, the monthly cycle, the daily cycle, the yearly cycle of the seasons, and so many more. The daily cycle, Golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, rolling the light before the dark and the dark before the light. Thank you, God, for mixing it all up. That's really what it says, right? Ma'ariv, right, which is what gives the service its name. It also gives west its name because sunset is the mixing, right? That is the mixing bowl, and it is that throw intermixture. So thank you, God, for mixing it up. Thank you for the dark, because I realize without the dark there can be no light. That is huge. Right? You know the line, "Don't curse the dark, light a candle," right? Which is great as far as it goes. But what about don't curse the dark, let your eyes adjust and see the Milky Way? So there is beauty in the cycles that too often we miss. And again, not to make modernity and industrialism the boogeyman, I'm really grateful for penicillin. Right? I'm really grateful for Zoom, and et cetera. But at the same time, what's lost about our place in the cycles when we don't step back, when we allow the blinders of the upper middle class lifestyle that we're enmeshed in on a daily basis to just become the givens. And then we forget where we are in the cycle of the moon. Unless you come to shul and say, oh, we're benching Rosh Chodesh again? Right. Okay. Cycles. So Mari Varavim is incredibly powerful because it locates us with gratitude for even the parts of the cycles we wouldn't otherwise endorse. But the cycle itself is holy. So the upswing and the downswing both need to be celebrated. In a minute, after Ahavat Olam, Shema, the affirmation of oneness, Ve'ahavta, and then the second paragraph of the Shema, the one that got reinserted in the liberal liturgies. And I assume you've all read the beautiful covenant under the page. You should.
David Deutsch's reclaiming of the liturgy.
Exactly, and Art Green next to him. It's beautiful stuff. But the bottom line is our ancestors, meaning like Mordechai Kaplan ancestors, right, tried to
Slightly
initially
less
to
ancient
take
ancestors.
out this second paragraph of the Shema because it was too reward and punishment. It was too much of an assumption about the sticks and the carrots having real-time effect. And we know that righteous people suffer and schmucks flourish. What's up with that, right? So we can't just affirm it in that simple way, but the warning about the sticks and the carrots is exactly picking up on the cycles from 3 prayers earlier.
Yeah.
Right? Because God is basically saying, nature and its cycles will work with you if you work with them. But if you turn away and serve false gods, the gods of unquestioned modernity, the god of economic growth, the god of personal consumption, the god of private ownership, right? All of these things. And if we really make that where we locate our attempts at salvation, we won't be saved, quite the opposite. And the logical implication, this isn't punishment. This isn't the wrath of an angry God. This is like a parent telling the kid, all right, I've told you, go ahead and try it. You'll see. It's not going to be pretty.
Quite literally, natural consequences.
Natural consequences, exactly. And that's what this warning of the Shema is. A lot of what we're talking about over the course of the weekend is a dance of science and religion as 2 great frames for how we live our lives. And as people in liberal religion, pretty much to a one, we accept science and we still have a soft spot for the religion. And we realize that they don't automatically conflict. This isn't like Pope and Galileo, right? You have to be wrong. And yet, there's deeper reconciliation that we can get to. Modern science is telling us about the stick, not just the carrot. Modern science is making very clear the galloping rate of things to be concerned about the longer we go doing things that are unsustainable and unjust. And that is Deuteronomy chapter 11. That is, or chapter 6, verse 11, right? This This is the second paragraph of the Shema, and this is where the science and the Judaism come together. So the sticks are real, but don't forget the carrot. Don't forget the redeemed life that we can live according to the first half of this passage, when we actually serve the oneness of the universe, when we are in touch with that grand unity and we act within it, not too big for our britches, then the cycles work with us. We get the miracle of food from nothing but sunshine, dirt, and water. Don't take this for granted. The cycles rock. The cycles are resilient. We're messing with them. It's all true. But in this passage from Ma'ariv Aravim through the Shema, celebrate the cycles a little more than maybe you did before.
Bring a little ahavat olam to it.
Love of the world. Nice.
Page 63. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta. Ken Adonai Eloheinu v'shochveinu, v'kumenu nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נהגי יומם ולילה, נהגי יומם ולילה, ואהבתך לא תסור ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. Page 65, the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך שעריך, והיה אם שמוע תשמעו על מצוותיי אשר אנוכי מצווך. This evening we're going to ask that you continue with biblical selection number 2. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Page 78 below the line. Together. When our ancestors beheld these truths, they proclaimed, among all the gods we can name, who can compare to the one beyond naming? Among all the quantities we can label, number, mark, and measure, which compares to the mystery at the heart of reality? And when we embrace that mystery, we find the potential, the opportunity, the creativity for liberation in all of its forms. Page 79. Micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha, micha mocha nedar bakodesh nora teilot osefer nora teilot osefer malechutecha rauvanecha bokei hayam לפני משה זאלי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר יפעד אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו Baruch ata Adonai Gal Yisrael. Page 81. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom amidenu malkeinu l'chaim ufros aleinu sukat shalom ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha Ushmor tzeitenu v'oenu l'chaim u'l'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Baruch ata Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'al Yerushalayim. That root keeps showing up. Shamor. Yishmorcha v'shamaru. That root in that second chapter of Breshit that you talked about earlier about serving and defending, I like serve and preserve, to serve and preserve, right? Guarding, the guardians. I think we were talking about teams earlier. But yeah, as we rise on page 85 in spirit or in body for Vishamru, we notice this verb, this action that keeps following along with us. Through our liturgy, this idea that we as human beings are connected with the idea of protecting something. Yeah. Page 85. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתו לעם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני Israel, oti leolam, oti leolam, oti leolam. Shamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית. As we turn to page 91 for the Amidah recited silently in the evenings, and we take a moment for our own silent prayers. We don't turn too quickly past our alternative Shiviti meditation, created, of course, by Betsy Teutsch, a visual representation of the Amidah, and note that also there are alternative meditations on page 725, a short version of the Amidah on 730, the traditional liturgy here, and of course, the prayers of our own hearts. We take a few moments for silent prayer. Adonai svatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai. Say shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Kahase shalom bimromeha. Hitase shalom. Hu yaseh shalom. Hitase shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Say shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Osa shalom, shalom bimromeha. Hitase shalom. Hu yaseh shalom. Hitase shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei Tevel ve'imelu. Amen. Shabbat shalom. So we emerge back from our silent Amidah, our opportunity to turn inward. And then right afterwards, we turn outward. Our Mishaberach L'cholim, our prayer for healing and wholeness, which I think, Or we turn outward, sending our thoughts, our energy, our hopes for healing and wholeness to all of those in our many concentric circles of community who are in need of healing. But as I often say, it's not just a prayer qua prayer, right? We don't just send our hopes and our energy for healing and wholeness out into the world and say, done, great, check. It's also a reminder. It's kind of like a community bulletin board where we check in and notice, right, so-and-so needs maybe a phone call, a text message, a check-in, a chicken soup, a ride somewhere. There's something going on in so-and-so's life. And it calls us to turn those thoughts and that energy into actual action in each other's lives. It builds community. We get to do that work of supporting one another and bringing healing and wholeness into each other's lives. And so we send our hopes and our energy for healing and wholeness to Andrea Abrams-Herbert, to Fran Anderson, Roberta Archibald, Joan Axelroth, Ellen Azriel, Arden Barry and Carol Mueller-Bell, Rabbi Deborah Bowen, Seal Haight, Robin Kupo, Frankie Deaver, Joan Flaherty, Rhoda Gansler, Charles Gardner, who is on the mend, Joaquim Gabel, Eric Gershman, Jonathan Giannini, Marilyn Goldberg, Cordula Hamish, Marty Jacobs, Sharon Cass, Beverly and Howard Kaufman, Fran Kaufman, Diane Learn, Pat McHugh, Susan Moyer, Robert Mueller, Anthony Nero, Lisa Nicholson, Stan Pollock, Joel Popkin, Mike Rosenberg, Shelley Sanders, Rabbi Vivian Shern, who is also on the mend. Marlene Sortino, Howard Temple, Lynn Van Engel, Brandy Wazliewski, Stan Weckstein, Millie Weissman, Grace Zangwill, Eileen Zeff, and Grandpa Ira and Uncle Stan, who has a wrist injury. And are there others? Bert. Yeah. Fred?
Marvin Crane, Seth Poor.
Bob Shern.
Dorothy Berlin. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor Havracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishebera imotenu mekor habracha leavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Rabbi Fred. So it is my honor to, on behalf of our entire Spiritual Life Committee, officially welcome you to Or Hadash. Rabbi Fred is the chair of COJL, the Coalition for the Coalition on the Environment and Jewish Life. I have been messing up what that acronym stands for. I think people like now must think it stands for 4 different things, but it is officially the Coalition on the Environment and Jewish Life, and has been doing this work on Jewish environmentalism and justice for the better part of 3.5 decades now.
Crazy.
Has worked with Interfaith Power and Light, has done consulting on behalf of our movement and leadership on behalf of our movement, has been part of interfaith coalitions around climate justice, and we are just so thrilled to have you here. And to have been able to pry you away from your congregation, where you are, in fact, the congregational rabbi at Adat Shalom outside of Washington, D.C. So it is my absolute pleasure to have you here at Or Hadash, bringing us all your Torah this Shabbat. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you. So beautiful to be here. Some of you heard I'm back, but it's been a really long time. I visited once in Rabbi Vivian era, once in Rabbi Josh era, and so we're good now. But what a delight. This is a sister shul to mine, right? Similar demographic in a near suburb of a major East Coast city. I feel like I know you, even the ones I don't, and some I do, which is a beautiful thing. So a lot was promised in the description of tonight's learning. A crazy, ungepatchked amount of stuff was promised, and I promise not to keep you too late. So a little bit of learning in this kind of Devar Torah space, and then we're going to wrap up the service, and we have lots more opportunity. I hope you will join, whether or not, so to speak. A lot of fun stuff coming up. So it's really appropriate that this starts with the healing prayer, because as Rabbi Alanna said, this is about healing and wholeness. This is about moving toward wholeness. And of course, the root of shalom is shalem, which is whole. And war is not just bad for children and other living things, right? But I mean, just look at Ukraine as one horrific example, right? And there is no wholeness when there is a lack of peace. But if peace simply means the absence of war or out and out conflict, that isn't necessarily wholeness, right? Wholeness, we know as Jews, is a spiritual concept. To be whole, right? It can't necessarily put your finger on it, but we spend a lot of time working on it because that matters. And we know it when we feel it. And too often we're out of that alignment. And of course, to be whole in the ecosystem means that each part has to be operating as it's supposed to in right ratios at the right time, and back to the cycles and the way that we are messing with them at great danger to us, right? The Aldo Leopold, 1949 Sand County Almanac, if you're not familiar, ask me later, one of the truly great works of American ecological writing and thinking. And he says quite simply, the first rule of intelligent tinkering is don't throw away any of the parts. Right? And of course, with species extinction, and of course, with changing the cycles of when things bloom and when pollinators arrive, right, we are doing exactly that. We are conducting an uncontrolled science experiment, right? That's the beauty of that classic line that you see on the signs at environmental protests. There is no planet B, right? We don't have plan B, we don't have planet B because there is no room to do a controlled experiment. What happens when people spew so many greenhouse trapping gases in a short span that they change everything? I wonder. I'd love to see that next to an Earth that doesn't have that. Okay, so we are looking for wholeness. We already have a pretty good clue what it looks like. And that's why tomorrow afternoon, we're going to go into the relatively newer application of Musar, the classic field of Jewish inquiry where spirituality meets pop psychology meets ethics, right? And a self-improvement regimen that also makes us better citizens, including citizens of the globe. Because the key question that Musar came to ask is, how is it that we already know so much about right and wrong? We've been studying Talmud all this time, right? But we keep messing up. So clearly, the answer isn't necessarily one more page of Talmud. It's treating us as the text. Figure out why we're not doing what we know we need to do. We have a pretty good clue how to get greater wholeness. What is it that we're holding on to, unwilling to let go, that's actually keeping us from that wholeness? So this teaching coming after the Mishaberach, this is like meta Mishaberach, not just for the individual who is sick and please God getting better, but for 8 billion people on a planet that is sick in its own way, and yet the cure is already within our reach. Okay. In terms of that crazy Ungapachka list of all the things that we were supposed to cover in this moment, let's see. One was that it's all eco-Judaism, kind of almost the taunt. Can you name an approach to Judaism that doesn't touch on ecology? Right? And if you know what the very word means, ecology is study of the house, right? And economy is numbers of the house, right? Which one is bigger? Right? The numbers are a subset of the fields of inquiry of the study. The prefix is the same. Too often we assume the givens of a structure, much of which is economic. Some of it is social, some of it is racial and incredibly pernicious, right? But we start with those human givens. And again, our tradition gives us the tools, the permission, and even the goading to say, no, question those assumptions. Bring a different hashkafa, a different way of seeing. And maybe it's like the psalmist, right? Or maybe it's like the people who wrote Ma'ariv Aravim and said, thank you for the darkness as well as the light. That's in our collective DNA. We need to tap it. So it's all eco-Judaism, and it said we were going to explore the numerous ways in which tradition bids us to love and protect creation. So if you turn to the second last piece of paper in your packet, this is kind of a bunch of... Oh, beauteous, thank you. It's a bunch of different shiurim. This is pages 5 and 6. an invitation to take these home and read them, particularly with a magnifying glass. Try to get a lot in on a page. If exactly.
And I uploaded into the chat the source book as well for those who are on Zoom. And yes.
Golden, thank you. Okay, so enjoy and study when you can. We already covered in the beginning, we've looked at creation. There's more, obviously, that we can do to try to better understand what is this dominion idea that somehow creeps in there. And the basic analogy that I like is, in theory, I have dominion over my children. Which doesn't mean, it doesn't mean I slaughter them and eat them for dinner, right? It doesn't mean that if I can get some cheap electricity by cutting their heads off and getting a one-time source of stuff from inside, that I will do mountaintop removal mining on my children, right? Dominion means you have a certain range of influence and power over that needs to be exercised in careful stewardship and in, as we talked about before, not at the microphone, right relationship. So that's in the beginning. Whose earth is it anyway? That's that line from Psalm 24, and here's that text. So that we looked at after dinner. Along with the second paragraph of the Shema. So check, keep moving. On the right, some suggested actions, because it's not enough to simply have the theory. One of the things it said is we will mix study and action and science and text. So, I'm just really trying to be like Yotze in the halachic language, like, okay, I said I was going to do all these things. Check, good. But Baal Tashchit, if you look on page 5 in the middle, classic Jewish category of conservation. And for the most part, we're not going to be overtly political, but I think it bears noting that conserve, as in conservationist, is the same root as conservative, right? This should not be a political football. This should not be sacrificed on the altar of partisan politics. It's too big. It's our home. And there's an undercurrent here when we talk about groups like Interfaith Power and Light, and the idea of people coming together across difference, united by this broad category of being people of faith and conscience, and having some notion that if you love the Creator, you gotta love creation, at least a little bit. And if you actually take that to the voting booth, you take that to Harrisburg, you take that to Capitol Hill, maybe amazing things can happen. We're playing that angle. But our tradition has this beautiful notion coming from this random factoid about how ancient armies would work, that even when you are putting siege works against a city, and it would be much easier and less risky for your soldiers if you just cut down the trees so there were no hiding places, nonetheless, the trees are non-combatants. You can't do that. And so the logic of later Judaism in what's called Kal V'chomer, right, from easy to hard, if you're not allowed to cut down trees in wartime when it might actually save the lives of some of your soldiers, how much more so should you not be allowed to cut down old rainforest trees because the international economy has decided that pulp from certain islands is going to be cheaper? No, that's not okay. So we have this incredible ethic of not wasting and of stopping to think about the real value of things that becomes the measure of righteousness. Out of all the later passages about this, my favorite is Sefer HaChinuch. This is a pietistic German 13th-ish century list of logic behind the commandments to the extent that you can figure it out. So when they get to number 529, out of 613. And of course, we're Jews, we can't agree. So in some editions, it's number 530. But you get to Bal Tashchit, Deuteronomy 20:19, and they say, this is the yardstick of righteousness. A righteous person is someone who is pained and aggrieved at unnecessary loss and wasting and destruction. Whereas the measure of wickedness is destroy the world as you destroy yourself. That's really powerful stuff. I promised Bert earlier, please.
I often wondered, well, I'm politically involved. And I also wondered, though, why political conservatives seem to care less about environmental issues. And my theory, not necessarily eventually, is more of an economic one, that it's not that they are indifferent to, because I've often said, I write articles about, doesn't the Republican Party care about their children and their grandchildren and all that sort of thing? And I think it is because of the connection between political conservatism and capitalism. And that after the Industrial Revolution, where people saw everything as potential capital, it was okay to tear down the trees because that could be used for building. It's okay if, fossil fuel, because that was, good for mechanism. And I mean, does that answer make sense to you? Because I can never figure out, I would say to conservatives, but don't you care? Look at the pollution. You breathe the same air that I do. Does it? And it's, oh, it's not so bad. It's an exaggeration, etc.
Again, I like to think that we can find that common ground. And yes, we're looking at, it's like the famous parable of people blindfolded touching different parts of an elephant, right? Like we're looking at the same earth, but if you focus on what is monetizable, it's that earlier example of the barren tree, right? And that is here too. You're naming something that isn't just out there on the other side. And this is actually cutting edge Jewish environmental ethics. We're now questioning Bal Tashchit. This seemed for so long like, oh, yay, we've got it. This is a beautiful ancient Jewish contribution that says don't waste. But of course, study the Talmud, look at the codes, they're monetizing. Even the pasuk, and it goes on in chapter 20, verse 20, to say that only the non-fruit tree you can cut down, that it actually applies only to fruit bearing. And yet, if we think of fruit as in usufruct, right, fructose, right, where do we get the sugars that give us what we need? We need oxygen. We need retention of topsoil. We need shade, particularly in lower income neighborhoods, right? That we need habitat, right? All the things that a barren tree gives us, are those fruit or not? So in some ways, it's semantics. Is it monetizable in this narrow way or in this slightly broader way? And hopefully we will yet come to alignment. Excellent. So very quickly on the backside of this one, Shabbat itself, the idea of resting being the bomb, right? This is the time that we love, and it's when we step out of the rat race. It's when we are avoiding a focus on production and consumption and keeping up with the Joneses and checking our portfolios and all of that, right? And this is the day we hold up as symbolic, a foretaste of a messianic era. Shabbos is. And we have that also with the sabbatical year. Every 7th year, we count in that way. And then we count 7 sabbatical cycles. And then we have a really blowout party of Yovel, Jubilee, the 50th. So these nested cycles of rest hold out the question of what matters, which also comes back to this, right? Is gross domestic product the best measure of the health of a nation? And we know the answer is not, because when our heat trapping fossil fuels create more energy in storms and higher sea levels and cause more damage on coastlines and more injuries and deaths and more people losing all their stuff, gross domestic product goes up because they need new stuff. So we know none of this is new, right? But the point is to put a religious, spiritual, moral, urgent frame around redefining business as usual. And Shabbos and sabbatical, Shemitah, can be a piece of that. And likewise, when we talk Musar, we'll be talking about humility, taking up the right amount of space. But this question of where are we in the pecking order? It's very easy to slide into, and I'm doing this very intentionally with fellow Reconstructionists, to slide into an assumption that we are the chosen species, right? That somehow it was ordained that we get to do things that no one else does. That it's okay that we remake the rest of our surroundings in our image because we're us, we're chosen. We got the opposable thumb and the well-developed front cranial cortex, and come on, that's proof that God loves us in a very different way. Yeah, exactly, right? And so this idea of reorienting, yes, Judaism is a multivocal tradition, and a lot of phases in our tradition feed that narrative, the anthropocentric narrative, that people are at the center. Sometimes it's the androcentric, that men are at the center, right? And we've crossed that Rubicon in liberal communities, not thoroughly enough, but we're working on it. How far are we at addressing our anthropocentrism? What assumptions do we make about what we can get away with because we're human, as opposed to beaver or elephant, which are numbers 2 and 3 in satellite image of like how much one species can actually change a landscape? Yeah, fun fact, right? Anyway, but right, we're all in it together, and we know this, and we could go back and study the creation story to see just how we're all in it together. But beautiful texts here, take them home. Links, hyperlinks, organizations worth supporting. We'll talk more about some of them later. Back to what we promised. We promised in this way too much session that we would talk about how our environmental identities and our Jewish identities can actually strengthen each other. Of course, every minority group has this wonderful ability to know the dominant discourse and at the same time have another way of looking. The fact that we can think Hebrew, where tzedakah is connected to righteousness and law, as opposed to thinking only in English, where it's translated weakly as charity and it's in the purely optional space. That's a classic example of where just being a knowledgeable, connected Jew gives us a new way of looking at the world. All the more so here. And again, go back to the psalmist, go back to the cycles, go back to each of these phases. We have it. It's there. We just need to reclaim it. So one that I love, even though it's kind of in the weeds, of all the things to talk about on a weekend like this, it's the one just before it, page 4. And notice it's the same question, it's just which word do you emphasize? So why should we be Jewish environmentalists And why should we be Jewish environmentalists? And those are very different questions, and they do, in fact, reinforce one another. Lots of good reasons, including from Bert's old field of Jewish community relations, right? We want to be good allies, we got to be out there, and this is an incredible set of bridge building opportunities. We're worried about our younger generations finding Judaism relevant. Well, hate to say it, but disposables are a pretty big turnoff for a lot of very self-righteous college, give or take, or sometimes 53-year-old, right? Right, like the litmus test, like, does the shul get it? Now, if we drill down, this is a good example, right? The actual cradle to grave carbon footprint is debatable for waxed coated plates like we just used, as opposed to having plates that you have to wash at high temperature with soap and a lot of water, and that eventually will crack, right? So it's not as simple as there's always a right answer, but relevance for our youth, we need to be seen as out there on this. So there's a lot of reasons internal to the Jewish narrative about why be a Jewish environmentalist. Of course we're Jews, but our Judaism will be richer when we bring the environmental angle, and vice versa. To the extent that we, as many liberal Jews do, right, when push comes to shove, a lot of our allegiances are to some of these core pluralistic values that are drawn from modernity. They have antecedents in Judaism for sure, but we're not Bible thumpers saying, oh, maybe if I read a new thing from one of the great sources, I'll stop believing in LGBTQ equality. Like, no, right? We know we have certain values givens, and at the same time, there's real power in rooting what we care about in the religious narrative. And that, again, comes back to groups like Interfaith Power and Light and the possibility of building broad coalitions of people who care about some of the same things, including our grandchildren, including the poor and marginalized, BIPOC, right, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Global South, call it what you will. That's where Jews and Catholics get together. We're not going to agree on abortion, but the social teaching is amazing. And there's overlap there, right? And even many evangelicals deeply concerned about poverty and drill down on that, right? People worried about refugees, climate refugees, enough said, right? So in every one of these areas, it behooves us to root both halves of ourselves, the Jewish and the aware and concerned, right? Which for some of us, we embrace the title, the Jewish and the environmental, my ecological self and my Jewish self. Some of us aren't quite there, but just own it. We're all environmentalists at some level. But then when the rubber meets the road, where do we set the thermostat? How much do we fly? How bothered are we going to be about ESG and SRI in our 401ks? These are the real questions. And there's a tremendous amount of Jewish work being done around every one of those. And the rest of the weekend, we'll go into some of that. Okay. We also promised, oh man, yeah, this is kind of ridiculous. Well, oh yeah. So we got the link study in action, link science in text, not bad. The unique way that our denomination is a special source of strength for this sacred service. So now, page 2, Rabbeinu Kaplan smiling at us. The Siddur that was burned publicly on the sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan in front of the Hotel McAlpin early in 1945. The Nazis had not yet lost. Jewish bodies are burning, and a bunch of Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox rabbis burned Kaplan's Siddur. Kaplan, Eisenstein, and Cohn's Siddur that had this amazing passage in the introduction, 1945. Each of us should learn to think of themselves as though they were a cell in some living organism, which in a sense they actually are in their relation to the universe or cosmos. The world is more than nature. It's nature with a soul. That soul of nature is what we mean by God. That's some good theology. But what's most amazing is it's some good science. Because not until the late 1970s would atmospheric chemists, James Lovelock and an amazing Jewish woman who doesn't get enough credit, Lynn Margulies, would come along and produce in science what is called the Gaia hypothesis, the idea that there's almost a self-regulating nature to the biosphere that helps enable life in the same way as an organism. You've got 2 trillion cells, each doing their own thing. And somehow they keep you within a couple degrees Fahrenheit of 98.6, right? They know what they're doing, even though they're doing their own thing, they're doing it together. And when one changes, the other changes. And at some level, that's the biospheric reality. Kaplan and friends named that a generation before it entered the scientific pantheon. I think that's kind of cool. And with that, there's lots more. Maybe tomorrow we'll have some fun with it. This is just a starter list of kind of some of the ways that a Reconstructionist outlook, what makes us unique in as much as we are unique within the Jewish ecosystem, so to speak, and how does it connect to the topic of our inquiry this weekend? There's more there. But for now, just whetting your appetite. And in the home stretch of the too much that we were going to cover all at once, to stand spiritually with all that is imperiled, from endangered species and ecosystems, to people harmed by environmental racism, to our own progeny. So I'm cheating a little because I wrote that, but that is the big 3. And if you only walk away remembering the big 3 reasons to prioritize climate justice and environmental sustainability, 1 is all God's critters got a place in the choir, right? And it's imperiled species and ecosystems. Ultimately, we know that our life is dependent on them, but right now, species by species, bioregion by bioregion, it's a fight. And all the choices we make every day, again, about our investments, about our votes, about our meal planning, about how often we drive when we could take SEPTA or not drive. By the way, you people on Zoom, lower carbon footprint, way to go, right? Right, it's all connected. So 1 is the critters, 2 are the humans in this time. Upper middle class, affluent, disproportionately white communities are not, by and large, bearing the brunt of the early impacts of climate injustice. There are exceptions. Hurricane Sandy, right? I mean, we see it, but by and large, it's the people who have not been empowered because of histories of racism, colonialism, etc., who are being hurt the fastest and the worst. Ironically, those who did the least to contribute to the crisis we're in That's not fair. We know this. Go back to kindergarten, right? What's fair? So the question is, what are we doing about it? Back to those assumptions, those questioned or unquestioned privileges that we carry with us. Real issues there. So number one, all God's critters. Number two, all God's children. And number three, our children. Because ultimately, it's Ledor Vador. This is about generation to generation. And the most powerful example of this is the snow job that the rabbis do on you at Yom Kippur. So one more, name that tune. Yananai, yananai, yanai, nai, 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 nai. Yanai, yanai, nai, yanai, nai, 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 nai. Yananai, nai, yanai, nai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, 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 yanai, nai, nai, nai. Wow. Someone up there must be a Beatles fan. Number nine. Yeah, okay. Right. So, as we know, the 13 attributes of God, this is Exodus 34, verses 6 and 7. Moses, right after the golden calf, God says, I want to destroy it all. Moses plays some interesting psychology games with God to defend the people. We're here because of it. And still says, okay, I've now proven myself. I really want to know your essence. Let me see your face. No, can't see my face and live. I'll show you my backside. I'll show you where I stand and how it looks from where I stand. And I will tell you my essence, my midot, my attributes. And they are by and large called the 13 attributes of compassion, because it's a whole lot of synonyms for forgiveness and patience. Read the rest of the Torah. Yeah, gonna give God maybe a 6.5 on that one, right? But here's the funny thing. Nose avon, wipes away the avon, which is one kind of iniquity. V'fesha, and another kind of iniquity, right? V'chata, chet, which is yet another kind of iniquity. God is wiping away all the iniquities. V'nakeh, nakeh, from like nikayon, to make it clean. God makes it clean. God wipes the slate clean. What a beautiful place to end. There's a little problem. Open the Torah, and the next word is lo. It's properly vocalized, vinakeh, lo yinakeh. Wipes clean? No. God will not wipe clean. Iniquity is iniquity. The choices we make have real implications. Poked avon avot. God actually, or the universe, or nature, or whatever you want to call it, actually extends the impact of the iniquity of the parents onto the children. Va'al b'nei banim, and onto the children's children, al shileshim va'al ribeim. To the third and fourth generation. Your great-great-grandchildren will suffer for every time you turn on the ignition of an internal combustion engine, even to get to shul, even to visit family, even to go do a mitzvah. This is not easy. There's no obvious answer. To be alive is to have a carbon footprint, right? And does that mean then we're just going to not worry about it? No, we're Jews. We'd better worry about it. But here's the amazing thing. Third and fourth generation, on average, a generation these days is somewhere between maybe 25 and 33 years. So third and fourth generation is a century. And a century is about exactly how long carbon dioxide that is burned for one moment of propulsion in our gas guzzler or light on this beautiful roof in the sanctuary, one moment, and the carbon that fueled it from natural gas or coal or oil endures for a century, third and fourth generation, but not fifth and sixth generation. It's a little bit cold comfort to say, yeah, I messed it up for everyone I'm going to know and everyone they're going to know. But if I think about the family tree as far forward, as I try to reconstruct it going back, and many of us are lucky if we can go back past the third and fourth generation. But if we project that far forward, we can still save them. Is Ledor Vador just something we love to chant? Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador Nagid God Lecha. From generation to generation, we will magnify your name. What are we doing for our next generation? Do it for the critters. Do it for the people. Do it for your people. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So, speaking of sanctifying that name, yeah.
Tikkun Olam time.
Well, yes, and Kiddush time, and then Tikkun Olam time.
Bring it on.
Yeah, so on a regular Friday night, we lift up our Kiddush cup and we invite people to fill it with even more sweetness until our cup overflows with all of the things that we're celebrating. Birthdays, anniversaries, milestone moments. I wonder if this week we can also fill our cup with things that we are celebrating a commitment to. So we can make an addition. So I want to invite people to share what everyone is celebrating this week, but also maybe what drop of sweetness you're gleaning from this evening that you want to add into the new week. Yeah.
So, speaking for myself.
Oh wait, my unmute button.
Sorry.
My mobile unmute button. I left it back here with Bert and Joy. Sorry about that.
Speaking for myself, but I believe speaking for the rest of the spiritual life community, I am so happy celebrating that the planning for scholar in residence in the secular year of 2023 is over. And we're actually doing it and enjoying it.
Nice. Nice. Sharon says that she is celebrating. Oh my goodness, there we go. I finished my junior year and the first time in the associate degree program on Monday, and then come home on Tuesday night for my busy summer break.
Woohoo! All right.
Who else? Yeah, Jen. It's off. Now it's on.
I received a call today that I will be published as a children's author,
Whoa.
writing about.
Wait, didn't you just announce that you sent your manuscript away yesterday?
Yes, I sent my
What?
manuscript in a week ago, and it's about a child who is trying to do good with the world and the earth, and very appropriate for tonight. So I'm very excited, and it rhymes.
Wow. Mazel tov.
Yeah.
Who else? Other things we're celebrating or things that we want to commit to add sweetness to our relationship with balance in our lives on this planet? Thanks. All right. So we hold up our glass of sweetness as we rise in spirit or in body for Kiddush. And actually, I'm wondering, I was originally going to call up for Kiddush our co-chairs of spiritual life, Cheryl and Carolyn. So I'm going to call up Carolyn, and I'm going to spotlight Cheryl to lead us in Kiddush tonight. But here's the deal. One of you is going to have to do the singing part, because that doesn't work well when one of you is on Zoom and one of you is in the room. So rock, paper, scissors it out for who's singing and who's just holding. There we go.
I'll hold.
You'll hold.
Right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hini lanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit. Kihu Yom Tehillah Lemikrae Kodesh Zecher Letziat Mitzrayim Ki Aleinu Karata V'yatanu Kidashta La'avodatecha V'shabbat Kodesh B'ahava uvratzon Hinhaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat
L'chaim.
I'm getting a
L'chaim.
kick out of the transliteration here.
There we go. And so we stay just like this as we turn the page to Aleinu, which is on page 121. Eshkoch. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakom, l'teit gedula leotzer breshit, shenatan lanu tamat v'chaye olam nata betochenu. אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ועושה הארץ ומשה ויקרא ראש. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו. We can be seated. So we turn to page 131. We turn in our hearts and our memories for those whom we've loved and lost in recent weeks. We are in a period of Shloshim, the month following the passing of Elizabeth Hemmer-Quate, late wife of Paul Hemmer-Quate and cousin of Eileen Cooper-Smith. And also, we're in a period of Shloshim, the month following the passing of David Rakow, father of Jennifer Rakow, father-in-law of Tamar Kamiankowski, grandfather of Tali and Alex. And we mark the Yortzites, the anniversaries of the passing of Rachel Shapira, great-grandmother of Meryl Stern, which I suppose also makes her the great-great-grandmother of Jen Lavenberg. Seymour Jacobs, father of Marty Jacobs. Myron Netchin, father of Jim Netchin. Todd Marcus, brother of Sandy Lieberman. Harriet Saul, mother of Sandy Saul. Madeline Snyder, grandmother of Steffi Love, Abe Salem, father of Lucy Raisman, and Leroy Belzer, father of Eliza Belzer. And if there are others who are saying Kaddish or marking your site, I want to invite you to share their names as well. So David, you're still saying Kaddish for your dad. Stan. Thanks. Thanks. So I want to invite mourners, those observing a Yortzeit, to rise in spirit or in body for mourners Kaddish, along with those whose tradition it is to rise for Kaddish, page 131. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divrach v'rutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'mechon v'b'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabba v'orach le'alam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'yitomam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithalal shmei v'kudesha brichu, le'ela mimku birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba maya, v'chayim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom limramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru. Amen, zichronam livracha. I want to apologize, Cheryl, for leaving you spotlighted for so long. I hope that was not a burden for you, but instead just a fun little quirk of services tonight. And so Shabbat Shalom, it is wonderful to be here with everybody on this kickoff Friday night of our Scholar in Residence weekend. So this is what should be my fourth SIR at Or Hadash, which is really my third SIR at Or Hadash, because the first one was meant to be the week after, the Shabbat after the pandemic began, and then it happened the next year, but online. And then last year we were truly hybrid with Joey Weisenberg, which was amazing and wonderful, and we figured out a lot of stuff on hybrid, and I feel like I feel like it's been 3 different modalities of SIR with this community, and so I feel like it's like a Shehechianu moment for each of these very different Scholar in Residence weekends. It is really fabulous to to see all of these faces tonight and to learn together this weekend with Rabbi Fred Sherlinder Dobb. Our weekend, of course, continues tomorrow morning here at Or Hadash. The weather is not going to hold for us, so please come ready to go outside, ready for an experience in, with, around nature, a Shabbat morning tefillah experience incorporating nature, but we're gonna lean on the fact that we have the blessing of stable shelter here at Or Hadash, and also lovely green outdoor spaces in between the raindrops. So please join Rabbi Fred tomorrow morning. That starts at 10 a.m. The schedule is flip-flopped. Torah study is in the afternoon. No bagels. Instead, sandwiches and goodies for Sudat Shlishit, the third meal, in the afternoon at 5 p.m. For a Sudat Shlishit learning, as Rabbi Fred mentioned, bringing our Jewish ethical practice of Musar to bear on our habits concerning the environment, and you said it so much better than I did, but that's why he's the Scholar in Residence, and yes. And then that will be followed by, God willing, a Havdalah outdoors around the fire pit. If the rain does not clear by 7 p.m., we will make Havdalah together still, and it will be lovely, and we'll have some less than roasted marshmallows and some other goodies together as we end Shabbat together. But please do bring guitars, ukuleles, drums, yourselves. We're gonna sing out Shabbat together, hopefully outdoors in nature with some s'mores, both gluten-free and non. Marshmallows are vegan, so those who worry about the fish gelatin of kosher marshmallows, don't worry about it. The chocolate is not fair trade, it's Hershey. Apologies. There will be some fair trade chocolate available as well. Cool. Lovely. Beyond this weekend, next Friday evening is the congregational meeting and dinner beginning at 6 p.m. Woo! Get excited for the congregational meeting and the dinner. RSVP to Nadine in the office by Tuesday. It's great when you're sitting right there for sure. By Tuesday to let us know how much food to order. And then following that, of course, will be Friday night services, but we really do need and want to celebrate our year together, to usher in and vote in officially our new board slate, to officially affirm our congregational budget and learn about it, and all of the other pieces of communal governance and celebration that come with our annual congregational meeting. That is next Friday night. Next Saturday, don't worry if it's raining tomorrow, because next Saturday is Shabbat in the park. We're going to be outdoors. Don't rain again, please. We just switched over from Mashiv Haruach, Morid Hagashem, that rain prayer, to Morid Hatal. The universe didn't quite get the memo that it's supposed to be dew and not rain, but hopefully we will be in Robbins Park next Saturday morning for Torah study and Shabbat morning services. The following weekend, we celebrate the bat mitzvah of Thea Cooper-Smith on Saturday morning. Friday night, which Thea will be co-leading with me, is also honoring our Mensch-to-Mensch mentors. If you are a Mensch-to-Mensch mentor, raise up your hand. Raise them up, nice and high. Woo! A lot of people in this room are or have been Mensch-to-Mensch mentors, folks who work with our Hebrew school students from 5th grade onward on their tefillot, on their prayers. What? I think they're assigned in 5th now. They were assigned in 4th, it was too early. 5th grade on now, and then in 7th grade become step into that place of helping them to prepare their tefillot for their B'nai Mitzvah services. And building that intergenerational connection with our students. And so we honor our Mensch-to-Mensch mentors at that first Friday service that's really on a second Friday, because the first Friday is the congregational meeting. It's like how next year there's a leap month and Easter is a month before Passover. Yeah, sometimes the first Friday is not the first Friday. May 7th is the final event of the Israel 75 Festival here in Philadelphia, the Taste of Israel Festival at 1 p.m. at the Seligman campus of the JCC in Wynwood. There is a bus leaving from Temple Sinai at, I want to say 11, that you can RSVP for by this coming Friday. Or you can just drive yourself to the festival. But reduce your carbon footprint, take the bus. Don't try to walk to the main line. And then just 2 more announcements. One is that on Wednesday, May 10th, is our next singing circle here in the sanctuary. Contact Joe Adler for more information. But basically, if you love to sing and love to build community through song, come to Singing Circle, 7 p.m., Wednesday, May 10th, the second Wednesday of each month. And then finally, there are so many more things that I could announce, but the last one I will announce are that on Sunday, May 21st, there is an open Makela rehearsal at 1:30 p.m. in the sanctuary. If you are thinking about joining the Makela, if you love to sing, and joining and being part of the Makela has been one of those things on your to-do list, and it just wasn't the right time, and now it is, this is the time to join our choir. Yes, Carol Mueller-Bell, please do say something about that.
I've been a member of the Makela for about 25 years. I just want anybody who's interested, if you love to sing, you do not need to know how to read music. You do not need to know how to read Hebrew. All of our lyrics are transliterated, and Josh, our conductor, does an amazing job of making it easy for you to learn your parts. So please come to the open rehearsal.
Woo! So that will be the first of our open rehearsals, working on, yes, and yeah, mom of Josh,
I think
slash
that,
fellow choir member.
there is an open rehearsal this Sunday.
Also?
Well, it's this Sunday and next Sunday, the 7th. I do not think that it's the 21st. I will confirm that.
Fascinating.
But we are having rehearsal this Sunday. Yeah.
There seems to be a machloket within the choir.
This Sunday and next Sunday, right? And I
Oh,
don't.
Cheryl Burson, the tenor section also thinks that it's this Sunday.
Yes. So.
Both this Sunday and the 21st.
This Sunday and the 7th, I believe it is.
Yes. Do you have a thought
you know
about this?
what? It's this Sunday, and then I'll check with the choir director.
Well, no, but the 21st is the one that's on the website. Yeah. Okay, we've now confused everyone. Great. Fabulous. Well, so we know that this Sunday there's an open choir rehearsal for all the reasons that I just said. You should join the choir. For any subsequent ones, we will check this week's HaKesher, where we will have checked with Josh to confirm the correct dates for subsequent open choir rehearsals. I think that's a great place to end announcements, since clearly we should end on a high note, except that Steve Lieberstein has one more message. Steve. Oh, yes. Don't forget that message.
The 7th is also a very important day for our building.
Yes.
Because that is our volunteer work day. And
Thank you. Yes, our spring workday at Or Hadash. Contact Warren Young, Buildings and Grounds Chair extraordinaire, who fixed my cooling system just this week. So he will too fix you up with a wonderful project to help to maintain this incredible, beautiful home that we are in. So yes, be in touch with Warren about that, and that is May 7th in the morning. Let's stop announcing things before we really bury ourselves in a hole. Yeah. Holla, anyone? So we connect ourselves to community as we connect ourselves to the sustenance that feeds us and to this amazing oneg that we will enjoy together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Yeah. Oh, yes. So please do bring home your source books and readers and bring them back throughout the weekend. Please do think about how many you need for your household, using the principle of Bal Tashchit, of not being wasteful. And when it comes time in the future to rid yourself of them, think about how you do so in a conscious way. Shabbat shalom. Apparently, even when I write out my announcements.
It's a little crazy.
The choir.
It's so easy for those to snowball.
Yeah. I don't know when the rehearsal is. I don't know when the open rehearsal is. It is possible that it got changed again. Actually, it's like, wow, that is awesome. I love that connection. It was very cool. But, absolutely.
I noted I was going to talk about cycles,
Yes.
and then I was going to talk about carrots and sticks, and then I'm like, oh, look at how that connects.
I know. I was like, wow, that makes so much sense.
How many times have I given a kavanah in that point, and now it just popped?
That was awesome.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yes.
things more powerful. And then he sells it. But, yeah. But, so we had a meeting today where everything he's talking about, this is our North Star, is how we can monetize and and then his selling point was, what do you think? Don't just think of us as a we're legal investors are retirement savings, pension. Anyway, so what you were saying, there's a tension there. But what's, there's that aspect. How can you also, but also in a way that helps. I don't know, but that's something like never. My father talked about putting money back. Like how can we anyway, right. That's another. I'm just these are concepts that we're talking about. Can't put a word on it. Like the connection. Yeah. That is the most you need to be self-protective as an organism, right? Like to live, you need to be self-protective. Being too self-protective is going to get you in a world of ethical, moral, spiritual trouble. So it's that dance, right? Just like a cell, right? Sometimes people memory, too close or too open. It's past my bedtime. I'm waiting for my wife to go home. To be honest with you. Maybe you're waiting for your wife too. Well, then you're not going to. What? We'll be here. Hello. Yeah. Look yourself. Never give messages. Never give it. Just don't do it. You say, find out this. Read my message. Bad things come when you think it. Stop the event. Announce the wrong thing. Hey, I feel like Alex loves the fact that there are like all these little signs. He's like, I'm in this. Yep. The strawberries are gluten-free. Yeah. Are gluten-free strawberries.